Hello, everyone. This is Katana Abbott. I am so excited to be here. Welcome to Smart Women Talk. I search the world for smart women and a few good men, and we interview authors, best-selling authors, and thought leaders and change agents who are on that leading edge. So we have topics like money, business, health, inspiration, and the metaphysical. Today we have a returning guest. I'm so excited. She is a very dear friend. She's a co-founder and CEO of Beyond Basics. Her name is Pam Good, and we are going to be just jumping into the idea of purpose and joy, bringing more of it into your life. So we're going to talk about strategies for finding your purpose, why it's important to listen to your heart, and how the twists and turns along the journey can lead to success and joy. So I have to tell you about Pamela because 20 years ago, Pam took the Joy Road Highway exit to a struggling school in Detroit, delivering coats to children who needed them. And that trip turned into a revelation that the children needed much more than coats. This led her to co-found Beyond Basics, to provide intensive one-on-one reading, tutoring, and literacy enrichment programs for students in Detroit. Their program achieves academic grade level movement in an average of 6 weeks. It's huge. So Beyond Basics proven methods unlock the miracle and power of reading and open a whole new world and future to those who need it most. So Pamela, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here. We haven't seen each other because of the pandemic. We're usually going to your fundraisers and then going to other fundraisers in the community and going to concerts. Yeah. It's been crazy, you know?
Yes, it has, but it's an honor to be here again and a pleasure to be here and to talk about some important things today. So thank you for having our Beyond Basics team, which I'm just a representative for.
A very important representative. So let's talk about, we always like to hear someone's story and how you found your purpose, because I noticed that there's so much talk about people finding their purpose, finding their mission in life. And I just wrote in the newsletter that we published that my daughter called me up and said, "Mommy, I found my purpose." And, and it was so cute to hear her talk that way. And she said everything she's experienced in her life, good and bad, she's using today. So how did you find your purpose, and how does that tie into what we're talking about today?
Mm-hmm. Yes, well, I think, my experience, and I can look back now. So you have this hindsight of how did this all happen? But I would say that I really wasn't looking for my purpose, and since then, I think that to sit down and think about what your purpose is, you probably missed the mark. But, I responded that day to deliver coats just out of my heart, and decided to do more for the same reason. I had no idea what the next step would be. I just said that I would do more. And I think that if you lead from your heart and really, working to help others, you can't help but help yourself along the way. And that you ultimately are led to passion and purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. Tell us about your journey with literacy. Was that something that you were involved in other times in your life? I mean, how did that evolve? Because sometimes it's a surprise, right?
Right. Well, I was a stay-at-home mom at the time. I had 2 young children, early elementary, and delivered coats. And what struck me immediately was that they didn't have any of the extras that my children took for granted. No art, no music, no computers, not even recess, because they were afraid to let them go outside. And the do more really started with those academic enrichment programs, which, interestingly enough, we still use today. They're a really important component of our work with kids living in vulnerable communities. But I didn't become aware of illiteracy being a real crisis or a large problem until about 2003, 2004. So, going on 5 years after spending time in the school. So that's why I say sometimes, things get revealed to you later based on your dedication and, consistency, I guess.
So you brought coats, but how did you get involved in the school? I missed that part.
So my son's elementary school had a long time community coat drive, and it was part of the community service. And so that particular year, which would have been about 1999, I ended up running the community service area on the PTO. And it was just handed to me to follow through with what they had done for years. And so when I delivered the coats, for whatever reason, I was by myself. And I remember being overwhelmed by the community. You're going back 20 years in Detroit. You had a lot more people in the city. The school was just overflowing with kids. The neighborhoods, didn't necessarily feel safe.
Right.
So that very first trip, required me to, dig deep for courage. And I think it's interesting that so many of the things that we cherish, like courage and faith and joy, they really have to be put into action for anybody to see them. And it's almost like a physical muscle. You can use that muscle, but to develop courage, you have to really step out and be courageous. And so, that was the beginning pieces of really just pushing through some of my own personal fears and doing what I felt was right for a community that was very, 20 minutes down the freeway.
So, so you helped with the coats, but then you got involved in the school, correct?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
I left there that day and said I would do more. And when the need's so great, I think all of heaven comes to have you make good on those promises, right? So it wasn't too long after that my son was in elementary school, and there was a project through the district where they wanted to engage his class had taken on to be involved in a community service project.
Mhm.
And so I paired up his class with some second graders at Herman Rogers Academy. We went in, the kids took the stories down. They wrote the stories from the kids. We went back and published them in hardcover books. And that was our very first volunteer activity. And we grew those kinds of activities over the next 4 or 5 years and did all kinds of things. We partnered with companies and foundations and individuals, and we were able to love on the community in many ways.
Okay, but you still weren't doing reading literacy, the
Oh,
literacy.
no, we didn't
Oh,
know. We did not know about
okay.
that. That's
So
why
you're
I
doing
say,
art projects and stuff
yeah,
like that. Tell us about that. Yeah,
absolutely.
so,
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And I think that's why I say, let your heart lead, because you have no idea. I did not know that literacy was an issue. Now, I knew that kids needed reading buddies, but they also needed them out at my son's school, you know. But I didn't know that they were multiple grade levels behind before they even, I mean, at third grade, they don't even know the sounds of their letters. In high school, kids are reading, at a third, fourth, fifth grade level. I did not know the magnitude of the issue and that it wasn't being addressed for those kids farthest behind. And that really wasn't revealed to me until about 2004.
so how many years were you doing this program? It's like 3 years before you
Uh,
realized it?
about 4 years, yes.
So how was it brought to your attention then?
When we were funded to do our enrichment programs, reading buddies, book clubs, publishing centers, all day, every day in the school, we started serving more kids. And we became aware that the kids couldn't read, and most often they weren't even read to. Even today, we have 47% adult illiteracy in the city of Detroit. And so if you have almost 50% and you have those kids coming, they're ill prepared. And our society has not addressed this issue in decades. And so we have today 85% of the kids in Detroit public schools and many cities across this nation who can't read well enough to access the education that we are all providing and believing we're providing. But we have the shell of it. It'd be like sending 12-year-olds to college. You have the college professor, you have all of that in place, but they really can't access what they really need to learn to move forward. And I do think that because this has been a silent epidemic, it isn't really talked about, it isn't really addressed. We keep kids in school and they graduate not being able to read, and therefore they can't get a job. And it leads to many other false narratives that we all have to sort out as a people right now.
So tell us what that's like for a student to graduate. They
Mm.
get their diploma and they have this secret, right?
They do.
And they're told, okay, go get a job.
Yeah.
And tell us what that's like, because I bet a lot of the listeners have no idea what that's really like. And you've been there, you've been with those kids. And I know you were, and I saw the film with Elijah and I've met him. His
Yeah.
story was amazing. But tell us what that's like, because it's one thing to just hear it. Yeah, we hear it all the time. There's this reading problem, but how does that really affect a person? How does that affect their soul and their confidence and their future?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's the children that are more than a grade level behind that are really impacted because we're not giving them the level of intensity that they need to actually improve. And so I've learned what it's like after listening to other children,
Yeah.
and the elementary kids do not realize that they have a problem, and we pull them in and we get them reading. Remember this one fifth grader saying once, if you can read, you just know stuff. So, kids, you just know stuff that you wouldn't know before. So you become a reader for everybody around you. If you live in the city and you become a reader, you're reading for everyone because now you can be the one that knows the stuff and you can share it.
So they
With our
go
high
back
school
and read to
kids,
their parents too, then, because maybe their parents or grandma or something like that can't read, and
yeah.
it gives them a lot of pride and joy to be able to do that.
We've for years handed out donated books to kids and kind of build their own home libraries. And there was a young girl who would read to her grandmother and her mom, and they would do that on a regular basis. And over the summer, she would have her friends in to go over the books that they had in their home. And so we're serving a community that needs everything.
Mhm.
Absolutely everything. And they need our society to wake up and see their hardship and not just pay lip service to it. We need to get in and help them. And I do believe that empowering them with literacy is one of the quickest ways to draw attention to it while also solving the problem. But I would like to add, for the high school students who can't read,
Yeah, I wanted.
I've learned that they're blind to words. We go out in the community and there are words everywhere. Anything you want, if you wanted to, make a new recipe tonight, you would be reading that. So when we start working with them and letters start forming sounds that then mean something, they go out and all of a sudden the words are there and they see them. And I
A
think for
whole new
those,
world.
a whole new world.
Whole new world.
And for kids that can't read, they start isolating. They don't really say they can't read. They know that they don't get something. They know that they can't do what you're asking them to do when it involves words. Um, and they isolate. Elijah's one of the classic examples. Here he's 6'7",
Okay, so
almost
we have
350
to talk about
pounds.
Elijah. Tell them who Elijah is first, because I know, but our audience doesn't.
Well, and we have a video, I believe it's still on our website. It's called A Day in the Life of Elijah Craft, and you get to see his family. The most gracious, kind, and grateful young man that I believe we've come across. It's really how I met him because he wanted to say thank you. Um, but he was a senior at Central High School when we met, and the principal asked if we would take him in. And the first thing we do is assess the students. And we realized that Elijah was just reading at a first grade level. Although he's this big football player kid and he's in 12th grade,
Mm.
if we didn't start him at the first grade level, he would have missed it. He would not have really learned. And so, Elijah was able to describe in many ways what it's like to not read. And he continues to reach out. Almost every time that he's doing something that he knew he couldn't do if he wasn't able to read, like go to a doctor's office on his own, he'll call and he'd just say, Miss Pam, thank you. I can do this. I can do this because of, those tutors that work with them. So
And I
it's
remember
really,
you saying he was afraid to take the bus because he really couldn't read the sign on the front, so he didn't know where they were going. I mean, how horrifying that would be, like being in a prison.
it is. And or to go off with his friends thinking if they ran off, he couldn't find his way home,
Because he
having to
couldn't
take his
read
little
the sign.
brothers with
Yeah.
him to go pick up something for his mom. So there's lots of ways that they navigate not being reminded or not letting other people realize what's happening. And oftentimes they become behavior problems. I do think it's one of the biggest reasons for the ninth grade drop off. Kids stay in school to eighth grade, but many drop off and don't even go to high school. And I think it's because they realize that if you can't read, school isn't the place for you.
Right.
And so we really, as a society, as our Board of Education and as our government, there's two things that need to happen. One, we need to start supplying this intensive care, but we haven't dealt with this for decades. So we have to flatten the curve. We
Mhm.
need to just be partners, walk alongside districts, pull kids in, get them reading. It's remarkably quick and send them back to the classroom as readers. You really can't measure the effort and quality of a teacher until you send a literate child when the model itself doesn't even bring them up to grade level. So we need to start talking more about this and really just get to work because we have I don't know how many children across the nation, but I know that in Detroit public schools we have 43,000 children that need this intensive one-on-one tutoring.
So how does it actually happen? I mean, when does it begin?
Yeah.
When does
So
it begin, where the child starts falling behind? And is it in the home, or is it at the school, or is it just there's too many? I don't, like, what is the problem that they're facing? Because it sounds like it's a bigger problem in Detroit. Is it funding or too many students? Why is it so different?
this is a problem in any vulnerable community. You can take Pontiac, Flint, Muskegon, Benton Harbor. You have 80+% of the kids that are not able to read and access education. But this epidemic is spreading into communities like Rochester Hills and Grosse Pointe and Birmingham. We have many more kids nowadays that have learning differences, is how I refer to them. But they could be ADHD, dyslexic, have autism. They could even be English language learner who can speak English, but when it comes to reading and writing, they don't do it well enough. And so these kids are everywhere. You have a higher percentage in communities that are vulnerable and have a high poverty level.
So the reading and the writing would go together. So
Oh, yes.
it's not, so let's say Elijah's he has to read the signs and the bus to get to the job and find the company and read, when he gets in the building, then he has to read that application and he has to be able to fill it out, like, and present himself as someone who is worthy of getting hired there, that he's not illiterate. I mean, how is that going to affect this child?
Well, they won't do that. They
They
will,
just
they
won't
won't.
go.
They will self-isolate. It's
Okay.
why we have so many children gobbled up by the streets. I
Mhm.
mean, this is a horrific situation and it needs to tug at all of our hearts. And we need to get busy and get in there. And, I've wondered for years why we're not sending the Red Cross in. I don't think that there should be one homeless child in America. There's no reason for it, except we have these blind eyes towards it. We need to walk along vulnerable communities and not judge them. We just need to help them. And I'm hoping that that could be a silver lining that comes out of COVID because they seem to have people's attention more now than ever.
How
And
did
so
that
if
happen? What do
well,
you?
I think that you see the issues of the inner cities and recognizing that we have a community that believes that they don't matter, and
Okay.
in many ways they're not treated the same that so many other people are. And so that's the interpretation that anybody would have if that's how you're treated. And so they have many more areas that they need help. And I think it's in all of us to love to help each other.
Mhm.
And we have an abundance of opportunity in America right now to lift all of us up because there are a lot of people that need help. And we just need to do the simple things. All of the other purpose and joy and all that kind of stuff, if we do the simple things, live the next moment well, and help each other, we'll look back and we'll be amazed at all that we accomplished together.
So I know because I've, come to programs and I've learned what's going on. But for people who are listening, I'd like you to take just a minute and describe what you do when you come into a school. And I think you actually, do you still have the special building that you have down there? That's
We
your
do have
own?
the Family Literacy Center also.
Yes, you have
But
your own financial
we
literacy
do.
center. Not
Yeah.
financial literacy. What is it?
Family. We have a Family Literacy Center
Family.
close to Central High School.
But what
I
do you
would
do as an
say,
organization when you come into a school, like what is it you do, and like how long are you there? Is it a permanent thing? I'm just, how that process works.
mhm. Yes, I think that, one of the reasons that this hasn't been addressed is there isn't any money flowing to the intensive literacy intervention. And so one thing we do is raise the money to tutor kids. Our tutors work an hour a day, 5 days a week per child. And then there's other administrative stuff that they do. So they are paid. We pay our tutors. So once we have funding, we would partner with the school. They would give us a room to run our programs out of. We would set that room up. We would send a program manager and tutors there. They would have their own desk and area. We would assess the students. We would select students to be tutored, and we would pair them with that tutor, and they would have that same tutor every day, 5 days a week, an hour a day, for the duration of their tutoring. And we say we get kids reading on average in 6 weeks, but some kids need anywhere from 4 weeks to 14 weeks. And they just stay with that tutor until they complete. Now, because of COVID, we're doing our work online.
Oh, okay.
So we pair them up online, and we do need more tutors. So if anybody's out there listening, we're always hiring tutors to help us. But that's really how it's done, to assess them and to begin that one-on-one intervention. It's just so important. And, we've had a lot of STEM and STEAM programs come in, which are all necessary and vital, and I'm thrilled to have them there. But until we add that R, you won't get a STEM or STEAM without a STREAM. And that R for Beyond Basic stands for reading and relationship. And it's important. And once kids are reading, then all the other programs that people are running, even the teachers, if they have literate kids, they're going to be able to do the job that we're expecting them to do. And the mentors are going to be able to, help the kids. And so it's simple work. In the sense of working one child at a time. It gets complicated navigating, the community and the numbers of kids that we try to tutor. But
So
basically, it's simple.
I'm sorry, you have one tutor per child. How many tutors are in the school? Because there's 43,000 students that need help.
Yeah, so we're not funded for all those students. Yeah, so what we have right now is we usually put about 10 to 20 tutors in a school, depending on the level of funding. At the moment, we have 100 tutors that are working online with students in the district. And, they're just getting one kid at a time reading. I mean, it's really what we do. We get them reading, and we pull the other kid in and, get them reading. And, hopefully as we all start advocating and talking about this and recognizing those kids in our own school districts that are far behind, that will really get our government and our Board of Education, to address it.
So why is there so much more interest in STEM than in reading?
I think because people haven't realized how far they're behind. They just think it's the next step. And that if they're reading and they're in school, well, then let's mentor them. Let's science, technology, engineering. But, you have maybe 10, 15% of kids in the district that works for. But our crisis is the fact that 85% aren't nearly ready for that. And I think I do want to add, in terms of our curriculum, the science of reading is really a key point. It isn't just any curriculum that we use. We use the Tatum learning system. It breaks the English language down into 25 concepts. It is phonics based. It is a multisensory Orton Gillingham program. These programs are proven and there are many people using them. I think we just apply them in a unique way to kids in the most vulnerable districts who are farthest behind.
So people in school districts, if they're watching this, they could
Mhm.
actually access those materials and offer them in
Yes.
their own school.
Yes.
Now, what if a school district wants to bring Beyond Basics in? Would you work with them and help them hire tutors? And would they have to do the fundraising? And how would that work?
Well, I think that if anybody is interested to have a phone call, because, it is community by community. The funding does, we have to find the funding because we have to hire tutors. We can walk alongside and hire tutors in their own community. We do have all the back office that's on, we have a database that tracks it. So we definitely can, we don't have to replicate those resources. We can just, help districts track that. But we could also just share what we do and have that conversation with them. Maybe they do want to roll it out themselves. But we're willing to have that conversation and see where it goes from there.
So how many tutors do you have? You said 100?
We have 100 right now. Mhm.
Okay. How many do you need? What's your wish
Well,
list?
my wish list is to, almost triple our numbers by fall. And
Wow,
so,
300.
we're looking to hire 150 more tutors to be able to do that in Detroit, while also trying to, expand. We're also in Taylor and have a couple other cities that we're in conversations with. So it's hiring tutors, pairing them with kids, and getting kids reading as well as we can and as fast as we can.
So I've heard you use the word mentor. Is that different than a tutor?
Yes, mentors are usually volunteer,
Okay.
and they're mentoring in some way. It could be an engineer mentoring. It could be college career readiness, just reading better. When we're in the schools doing the work, we do have volunteers that come in and work one-on-one with kids who've just learned to read. They
Mhm.
continue to read with them, building their fluency and comprehension. But for us, mostly, mentors are usually volunteers in my world, and the tutors are paid staff. And to get kids reading, we really need the commitment of paid staff who learn the curriculum and work an hour a day every day with a child.
So yeah, and that's important because then you have a little bit of control because they are being paid and
Yeah.
they know that they have to show up and do the work, or they can be fired, right? Where
Well, and it's an
volunteers,
hour a day. It's
pardon?
an hour a day per child. That's a big
Yeah,
commitment.
yes, it is.
And we want you to stay the entire duration. So, for a full semester. And so it doesn't work for everyone.
Yeah.
Um, but we like to train our tutors and then they stay with us and they become more seasoned and, they just become really great. And
Who are these tutors? I'm curious, Pam.
um,
Like, give us a range of people that you have as tutors. Like, what do they do for a living? Are they working or homemakers or, tell us who they are.
yeah, so they come from all walks of life, all ages. Some are retired people. We've even had college students who made excellent tutors. I think they have a great rapport with the students. Um, Usually, people are drawn to us because they have a heart to help. So that, tends to be a component. And, they just do this work because they care about the kids. And so it could be, anyone really. Most of them tend to be college educated, but most of them also are doing this as a job. So they're not typically working somewhere else and then doing this.
Really? This is full time for them?
This would be full time for some and, part time for others, but usually they're working 30 to 40 hours a week. And
For
during
you?
the online season, yes, for us
Oh, so when
tutoring.
you say an hour a day per student, but they may
Oh,
have,
they're working with 4 or 5 students.
okay, I
Yeah,
can't,
so they have 4 or 5 students and
yeah,
they
okay.
have some setup time, prep time, and then they have some data entry, daily logs and things to keep. So it's about an hour and a half per student.
Okay.
And they're working with a number of students a day. Yes, I'm glad you brought that up, Katana.
Oh, it didn't make sense to me. I'm thinking an
Yeah.
hour a day, that would be like all the way downtown and,
Yeah, that would be like thousands of tutors, but no, they're working and we're turning tutors are moving through kids on average in 6 weeks. So they can see a group of tutors, maybe 4 different cycles of kids over a year. So they may impact somewhere between 20 to 30 kids, depending on the cycle. So it's a very meaningful work, and it's generational. I think our work really has a 3 generational impact. The student learns to read. It's broken the generational cycle. There's a reader now in a family who may have been illiterate, and their children will be readers. So it's truly a gift that keeps on giving. And I just hope that we just get going and the funding flows and we get all these kids. I mean, we could look back on this problem in 3 to 5 years if we just went all at it, as robust as we do some other things in our nation.
So give us an idea, because I remember the first time we talked about this, I said, Pam, this is an impossible, there's no solution. Oh, yes, there is. and I was so shocked that you were so optimistic, but it seems like you're having, I know you're having results. How many years have you done this and how many students have you impacted?
We achieved our first grade level movement through an intensive, the Tatum system, in 2008. It was the spring of 2008, and we really became a literacy organization then. I would say until we've learned what it takes for kids in vulnerable communities, that the problem was figuring out literacy. We've demonstrated that the kids are capable. The problem has been since then getting society to really embrace it and to do right by kids, getting them literate. And the more we, every year, every season, there are more and more people who understand that this work has to be done. And we have thousands of people connected to us. I know I'm one person here. We have 100 tutors, but we have good, caring people that have funded this work for 20 years. I mean, we've raised over $20 million of services over the last 20 years. We've put coats on 40,000 kids. I think we had some of these stats. That takes a lot of people working together to bring all of these things to the community. And so I see that this is starting to get on the radar. There was a literacy lawsuit back in 2015, and there was a settlement just this fall. The third grade reading law. I know that all these things are flawed and they're not the answer, but they've helped draw attention to this silent epidemic. And I think the more and more that we can talk about it as a community and advocate to our legislatures, the sooner we will be embracing this and we will look back on this issue. And illiteracy is connected to almost every social ill, but literacy reverses that. Our jails are full of illiterate. Our juvenile centers are full of illiterate.
Right.
We go to the schools, we go to the jails, we go to the juvenile centers, and we have a different America in a few years because we've embraced it. And if I may add one other thing about this,
to bring beyond basics into the prisons.
Well, I don't know that it has to be beyond basics, but it has to be following this model of delivering this intensive tutoring.
The program, the model.
I think that communities will embrace it themselves in many ways, but we have people stuck in jail right now because they do not have a way to make a living for themselves. I mean, and contrary to some people's opinion, everybody wants the same thing. They want to be able to take care of themselves. They want to be able to take care of their families. And I think literacy is in the way. And so, we need to come together as communities, recognize this, and walk alongside and get this work done. And it just lifts up all of us in the process.
So did you mention nationally how many people are illiterate? Because just in general in the population, do we have those numbers?
I don't have it currently in my head. I mean, that's something that we could get to you. And
I'm just curious.
I know that the proficiency rate in our state is the non-proficiency rate is 46% of the students attending school today can't read.
40.
That's a lot.
And that's overall, like inner city and suburbs.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. And that's statewide. But I would say, people often they think that maybe I'm delusional or something. I've lately called myself a solutionist, but I look at this, that one of the beauties of being able to solve this quickly is that we have pretty much the same educational model, whether it's charter or public, rolled out across the nation. We have kids who need this showing up to school every day. We have in every city, we have people who can fund it. We have people who can be tutors, and we have school districts that can allow partners to come in and help them do this. If you have a natural disaster, people come in and help the professionals deal with. You get more, if you had a hurricane hit, you get experts coming in and helping the police and the fire and nurses.
Right.
We have that kind of crisis right now in education. There are lots of ideas about what's causing it, but until we fix literacy, you're not going to be able to isolate what the other issues are. And so I look at it that each community is very similar across our nation. And we have people who can walk alongside communities and get them literate. And then we have to reassess and say, okay, how much changed because of that? And where do we go from here?
Well, yeah, and it's like as things improve, everything else in society goes up.
Absolutely.
Everything improves.
You get a surge in the economy. As soon as people can read, they can get jobs, they want houses, they want cars, they want to take care of themselves and their families.
Well, and they can create and be innovative and start
absolutely.
businesses. I mean, right?
They can do it.
Yeah.
And I've noticed especially with the high school kids in the city, that there is this entrepreneurial spirit. They are problem solvers because they've been helping their families solve problems of food and housing and other things they need every day. And that's a vital resource right now because we have a lot of young people that, they really are more complacent and they're not wanting to start their own business and thinking about problem solving, all of those things to do it. And so, I just think that this is a beautiful, loving, kind community that has been crushed for way too long. And we need to step in, open our hearts, and just start meeting needs. And literacy is one of those.
Wow. So with these, with these different communities, what do you see as a solution? Is it something from the public sector or is it going to be from the private sector? What do you see happening? Because you're saying that there's funding available, but we're not getting the funding we need to eradicate the problem or to create, big solutions. You're working
Right.
with what you can do, but there's so many more that you're not able to reach.
I don't think the issue is a money problem. It's not understanding the issues. So they're throwing money at programs that help the 15% and not throwing anything that help the 85%, if you will. And, we've been funded by corporations and family foundations and individuals. So I do think that this needs to be looked at as a crisis and that we need to be having conversations at a government level on how to quickly get every child, especially attending school right now, literate. And there are obviously other people in the community that we need to help. But we're not talking about it in that way. We're not recognizing this. The states and the federal government are not recognizing this as a crisis.
Do you need a lobbyist or something?
Most people, they're starting to see there's a problem. I don't think that they're aware there's a solution and that they're not aware of the intensity. So we've been trying to spend some time in Lansing to talk to and share our knowledge with legislators so that when they go to make third grade reading laws, that they really understand third grade reading and what works and what doesn't and the populations. And so, we're trying to do that now. And I see them working towards, they want to solve it. It's just that it's been elusive. So hopefully.
Several times you've mentioned third grade reading level and third grade reading laws and that. I'm not familiar with that.
Okay, so the previous administration enacted a third grade reading law in the state of Michigan that said that, I think it was 2020, fall of 2020, that kids would be held back at third grade if they couldn't read. So they recognized there was a problem and they were trying to implement a solution. But this problem, the kids that can't read need that intensive one-on-one tutoring. And so resources didn't come and a model didn't come at the same time. And so if we can get, the attention to it with a model that works and the funds to align with that model, then we can be very successful and concentrate on getting kids reading. I think that most people believe, because of the studies, that this is a K-3 problem, but the crisis is K-12. And you have 85% of the kids in communities like Detroit, 4th through 12th grade, that need literacy intervention. You have 20% in Rochester Hills. So we have kids across this state that need intensive literacy intervention, and the schools are not given the means in which to roll that out currently. I'm seeing more attention being paid to it, and I'm hoping that we will get, just be able, that this stronghold will come down and that we can start really changing things in education and for our nation.
So do you think that we need to have, like, for example, our listeners and the general public writing to their Congress?
Yes, writing, calling.
The local level, the national
issue.
level, huh?
Yeah, and I would say, if this is national, Google and find what is the proficiency level of reading in the nation, and in their state, in their city. You can find it for your school district. And to also say that what the kids need. They need an intensive one-on-one intervention, the science of reading, and they need an assessment that shows exactly where they are. So as you're highlighting to your legislature that this is the problem, we have all these thousands of kids, also let them know that there's a solution. And we're happy to share with people how we do this. It isn't rocket science, and we can work with people to help them, start it in their own nation. We really together need to spark a literacy movement. And then people will start organically doing it. I mean, we could train people in communities, in churches and in neighborhoods to tutor, and they could start doing it also. So we just want people to realize the problem, but also realize there is a solution.
So
Yeah.
tell us some success stories you've had at the schools with the children, maybe with their experience or the teacher, how do things shift in that classroom when the students are starting to read, and then what happens at home?
So obviously the students,
but you have all these different ages and students that you've worked with.
We do. We have all different ages, and depending on the age of the student recognizes what's happened, especially middle and high school students. The families know, the teachers know, they can see it. And honestly, if you get somebody reading in a school like Central High School and you have 85% that can't read, those children end up in the top 15% just because they're readers. We've had kids that end up being the valedictorian of the class because now they read well. We're able to get some kids, especially kids, that aren't as far behind, reading above grade level. And I think we need to work with each student individually and, start cashing in on some of those college scholarships, because we're sending literate kids to college who can take that next step. But we really connect the kids to all the possibilities in their lives. Some of them go off to college. Some of them just start businesses. Some are able to work and just take care of their family. But we change the direction of that child's life. And we just have a lot of them to help. And so I know many people say it's about the one child, but for me, it's been about the thousands and thousands and thousands that need this, that have kept me going. And, there's a lot of work ahead of us. And I think it's the best thing that this nation can do to respond to the need of people in poverty, embrace literacy, and it would heal our nation.
So what can we do here to support Beyond Basics? If people want to get involved either as a mentor, a tutor, to maybe give money, do a fundraiser, or could they contact you so you could help teach them how to help you at a national level or in the government. Like, what are some of the things you'd suggest that
Yeah.
you could help us with?
I think
All right.
advocating for drawing attention to the problem, because kids are in schools today and can't read, and talking about the solution. Reaching out to us on our website, becoming a tutor, funding kids learning to read. The lowest level to actually sponsor a child is $500. There are many, many kids, and we're still, hand to mouth with that funding. I think that, I'm a woman of faith. This has been a journey that I've tried to let God lead me on. And I do think that praying for our nation and praying for this stronghold to come down so that we can truly live the life that we all believe that we are. And obviously, I say this last little statement, but, our society has a lot of social ills. Another way of saying that is our society is sick, and we need to start looking at ourselves and how we allow problems like this and the suffering of children to go on our nation unaddressed. And so lots of prayer, tutors, funding, and just tell everybody we got to deal with this.
So give us the website that we would go to.
Beyondbasics.org.
It's an org. Okay.
It's an org. Yeah.
Org. And on the website, all this information is available if they want to get involved. And there's people they can talk to, or can they make a donation online?
Yep. You make a donation online. You can inquire just a general question. You could sign up and be a tutor, and, we train you and walk through those steps. And we're happy to talk to any district or any community that wants to know more.
Wonderful. Yeah. Like I introduced you to a gal out in
I know, El Paso. Yeah. And they actually replicated our model there.
Oh,
yeah, it was amazing to be part of that, and to see how the language barrier along the, El Paso, Texas, really impedes students from being successful. And it's really literacy tutoring. So
that's amazing. Well, thank you, Pamela. It's been so wonderful connecting with you and then sharing with all of our community here at Smart Women.
Yeah, thank you. Our pleasure.
Absolutely. You're welcome.
Thank you.
So everyone, our next guest is going to be Pat Mousseau. She's our Canadian friend, and she is an award-winning speaker and business coach and former radio show host and coach. And she is going to be speaking to us in 2 weeks. So until then, please go out and live with more purpose, more passion, and more prosperity.